Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my ongoing series on the Bhagavad Gita. We will begin with the third adhyay of the Bhagavad Gita, which is known as Karma Yoga. Thus far, we have covered, if this video does not make much sense, then I would strongly urge you to watch my previous videos on the Bhagavad Gita, where I go through it shlok by shlok, adhyay by adhyay. And basically, thus far, we have seen how Arjun had a crisis of conscience and how Bhagwan Shri Krishna instructed him in the ways of the deepest moral philosophies of the Hindu way of life. He taught him some things about the true nature of consciousness, how thoughts should be recognized as just apparitions in our consciousness rather than absolute entities which define who we are. He also taught to him something about Sankhya Yoga. So Sankhya means analytics in Sanskrit, and so Sankhya Yoga means control or achieving mastery of the senses. Yogasan are the series of motions which white people or Western or the foreigners think of when they think of yoga. Whereas on the other hand, Sankhya Yoga, so what Bhagwan Shri Krishna instructs Arjuna is that one way to understand divinity is by cautious analytics, by refraining from by controlling your senses, by controlling your excess wants and desires, and focusing on the transcendent, focusing on the Paramatma, or the ultimate soul. However, for a Kshatriya like Arjun, whose duty it was to do battle, or for any active member of society, to completely withdraw ourselves from the senses it might not be the best option, and one does need to engage with society. One does need to perform certain actions and duties if one is to be a functioning member of society. Which brings us to the Adhyay 3, which is Karma Yoga. Karma means action. It is often understood in a very different way by Westerners or foreigners. But karma essentially in Sanskrit means action. And then sukarm are good action, kukarm are bad actions. And then if right, our bad actions lead to negative consequences for us, then in Sanskrit that is known as karma phal, or the fruit of our actions. That is the consequence of our own actions, which can have negative or positive consequences depending upon whether our actions were, negative or positive. So, with this brief introduction, I begin with the first shlok of the Karma Yoga of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Arjun Uvachaha Jayasi Chet Karmanas Te Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Thore Mama Niyojyasi Keshava. That is, Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshav, why do you wish me to engage in this ghastly warfare if you think intelligence is better than fruitive work? This is what Arjuna is saying, that thus far in the Adhyayas 1 and 2, Sri Bhagwan Sri Krishna has talked in depth on the nature of consciousness, how the first path or first step towards achieving enlightenment is to focus on that which is transcendent, and to withdraw oneself from the data in some sense that our senses are feeding, and to be situated in intelligence. And then Arjun asks Bhagwan Shri Krishna, he counters him by saying, hey, Bhagwan, if you think that that is the best way to do, then why is it that you are encouraging me to go fight against my brethren for a kingdom? Why are you doing this? And again, we come to this, what I find most unique about the Bhagavad Gita, where we constantly find Arjun seeking clarification and proposing counter questions to the, let's say, the edicts proposed by Bhagwan Shri Krishna, or God in some sense. And you don't really, to the best of my knowledge, you don't find this much in other religious traditions. Vyamishreneva vakyena buddhim mohayassiva me tadekam vada nishchitya yena shreyo hama pruyam. That is, my intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Lokesmindva Vividha Nishtha Pura prokta maya nagha jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. That is, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan Shri Krishna, said, O sinless Arjun, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical philosophical speculation, and others through devotional service. And this brings me to this. Um, I believe that I genuinely apologize for forgetting the exact name of the artist, but I believe that there was once a story about that an artist was walking along the street and he saw this woman and she was prostrating herself before for the image of Christ through a stained glass window. And this artist, instead of seeing divinity in the figure of Christ, he saw divinity in her devotion to Christ. And I believe that there are multiple ways of achieving the transcendent, and you can try to objectively analyze what is present in the different religious texts. You can try to get their meaning, understand their philosophy. To some extent, what I'm doing would be classified as Sankhya Yoga, or anyone who attempts to understand the philosophy behind religion would be considered as engaging in Sankhya Yoga. But the other way to do it is to simply act in the world by obeying our own conscience, to try to adhere to the best of our abilities, the highest standards of ethics and morality, and just act in this world. And that would be, in some sense, karma yoga, to be continuously devoted to the highest possible ideal that one can conceive of. And I believe this is what Bhagavan Shri Krishna is telling us. न कर्मणा मनारंभन्यो आरंभन नैष्कर्मा कर्म्यम पुरुषो श्रृणुते न न च संन्यासद सनाद एव सिद्धिं समाधि गच्छति. That is, not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. So, what Bhagavan Shri Krishna is telling Arjun, okay, one must withdraw, one must not be a slave to one's wants and desires, but that does not mean you stop acting in this world entirely. And this brings me to one of the fundamental differences, fundamental ideological divergences between the Buddhism and Hinduism. So they are based on this very similar philosophy in terms of karma, reincarnation, punarjanma, etc. However, where Buddhism and Hinduism diverge is in their prescription for action and prescription for enlightenment. So I believe, to the best of my knowledge, that Buddhism advocates that the ideal enlightened soul would be someone like, or someone similar to Gautam Buddha himself, who just sat under a tree. He meditated for transcendental knowledge. And this is, in some sense, what this is in some sense what according to Buddhism the ideal human being would be. On the other hand, the Bhagavad Gita and Hindu philosophy is much more action oriented. It does not tell people to detach themselves from the world, right? Like Bhagavan Gautam Buddha famously said that no, attachment is the root cause of all suffering. So how does one attain enlightenment? To detach yourself completely from the world. But Bhagavan Shri Krishna is not telling that. He's telling something exactly the opposite. He's telling one to actively engage in the work. And he's saying not by merely abstaining from work can one attain freedom from reaction. You know, so he said, if you're a human being, or indeed if you're any living organism, you're part of a network of life. And if you're born of this earth, then you will have to work, or you will have to do certain things just as a consequence of the fact that you're a creature in the network of life, and you cannot detach yourself from the entire world. It is impossible. And with this, I would end this video at the Shlok 4 of the third Adhyaya of the Bhagavad Gita. I hope you guys are liking this video series. Like, share, and subscribe, and Jai Shri Krishna.